Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Dual Screens podcast. I am one of your hosts, Stephen Fontana, and with me, as always, he's over there in the other box. He's Andy Asimakis. How are you, Andy?
I feel good. I'm freshly coiffed. And shaved down. I feel like I've lost like 10 pounds off my face and body.
Oh, I see.
The beard weight is a lot.
You do
feel
look
so
different.
big with the beard.
Right.
And then folks are always like, oh, did you lose weight? No, I just shaved. So the answer is yes, I did lose weight.
Yeah.
Nice. So much.
Technically, yes. Technically, you did. Yeah. I always like a good shave because then I when I call somebody a neck beard, I'm not like looking in the mirror pointing like Spider-Man or something like that. So that's always good. That's always good when you got that little fuzz down here. Ladies and gentlemen, joining us this week is Dave Wightman, the creator of Reina and Jericho, an intense, story-driven 2D action exploration game that blends demanding platforming, intense combat, and time-bending mechanics. Dave, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's awesome. We kind of fell in love with this game, and we were really looking forward to getting to dive deep into your cerebellum and figure out what the process was in getting this thing going. But before we do, why don't we tell everybody what the hell they're listening to or watching on YouTube? Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Dual Screens podcast. This is the internet's #1 indie interview podcast on the entire interwebs, by two people you've probably never heard of, probably. The show posts each and every Friday for your listening pleasure on your podcast service of choice, including our home, podbean.com. We're, of course, on everything. I mean, Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify, whatever. Apple Podcasts, whatever. You name it, we're on it. The Hub,
yes,
we're on it.
Yes.
I promise you, we're on it. And, of course, you can watch the video version on youtube.com/dualscreens TV. Very simple to do. And if you want to support us with your hard-earned cash, we do have a Patreon, patreon.com/NDS podcast, just like our Patreon producers, Colton the Apprentice Nestler, FNH Paul, and Vegas Girl on Fire. We cannot continue to grow without all of your support. So thank you from the bottom of our heart. You keep this train a-rolling. Now, speaking of the train rolling, Andy, are you all up inside this engine room ready to start us off?
Yes.
With our ceremonial lead-off question of the show?
You know, what's funny, sometimes I don't know where this question is going to end up going or being inspired from.
The trash, probably.
But a couple of Google searches later, I was like, okay, well, Google Dave's name and see what comes up.
Oh. Oh, boy.
And I came across...
A powerlifter.
Yes. And I came across a PlayStation blog post about said awesome game. So I want to ask Dave a very simple question.
Oh.
That is, PC load letter. What the fuck does that mean?
I don't know, but it makes me mad.
That's fair, I guess.
So, Dave, explain why I asked you that very specific Office Space reference question.
So, yeah, I had a job working as a web application developer. I started off in graphic design and then shifted. I was working a lot with the developers, and then I was doing a lot of code, and then I just switched entirely to be a senior app developer at the company I was at. And it was a good place. But if what you want to do is make video games, and they do not make video games, then they can only make you so happy. And I quit. I had been just sort of in the evenings and stuff working on a game because I wanted to make a video game, and I thought I'll pick a Metroidvania. No one's doing those right now.
Not a single person did that. Good job. Good call.
Yeah. Now everybody's making Metroidvanias, but yeah, at the time it was cool. I quit my job, marched in there, and I listened to some Office Space stuff. Listened to Damn It Feels Good to Be a Gangster to psych myself up, because that montage is inspirational to me of Peter just ignoring the phone calls from his boss and like taking his desk apart. And so, yeah, I put that on loop a little bit, and I walked in there and I walked into my boss's office, and then he was out for the day. So I walked back to my desk, changed the name the letter was addressed to, went to my boss's office, dropped off the letter.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And they took me out to lunch and said, could we give you a raise to make you stay? And I said, no. And I felt very cool.
I like how you weren't inspired to rob your company blind, but to make a game instead. So that's a good.
Absolutely, I did not do that. This podcast is being recorded right now.
Wait a minute.
It is.
Who's funding your game?
You know what?
Good question.
What matters is that we don't talk about that.
True.
All right.
This is true.
To answer your question, the kids' college fund. No, yeah, all my money saved up is funding the game. We're self-funded, and I'll let you know whether or not it was a good idea in a few months.
Gotcha. I have a funny feeling it's going to work out. Because
I sure hope so.
You're not just making a Metroidvania. Like it's very easy to be reductive when it comes to video games. When you're describing video games, just because of you're trying to touch what people know. Oh, it's a platformer. It's like Mario. It's a Metroidvania game. It's an RPG. Whatever. It's a sandbox game. You know, whatever. So, but there's a lot more to Reina and Jericho. Can you tell us very quickly, or that doesn't have to be quickly, but just succinctly, that's the word I was looking for. Sorry, I was like stinctly. What's the elevator pitch here? What is Reina and Jericho?
So, yeah, you mentioned it a little bit at the beginning. Story-driven action exploration. That's the code word for Metroidvania. But I'm told not to describe my game in terms of other games. So, action exploration, story-driven, and it's got time travel in it. So it's going to explore cause and effect. In a lot of Metroidvania games, you explore things geographically. You go places. This adds the sequence of events into it, and the sequence of events does not have to happen in order, even to the degree that you can flip cause and effect. You can get something before you do the thing you did to get it, and it gets weird. And we've got some puzzles have been added that weren't in the demo, but yeah, we've got some trippy stuff to add in there, and the story is going to really lean into all of that. And I think go to interesting places. It's hard to say because it's like I wrote the story, but I think it's cool. A lot depends on the sort of things you're into. But yeah, for me, I'm trying to make a impactful story, and it's about suffering, which is always everyone's favorite subject.
Definitely. One of the things that really stood out to me is that it doesn't seem like a game that's just using the time mechanic just to solve puzzles. It uses it as a narrative. It uses it as an environmental storytelling as well. One of the things you showed us in the demo that we saw had to do with killing an enemy and then kind of doing like almost like a save state mechanic, where then you could manipulate time, but you start from after that enemy being destroyed, so like he wasn't there anymore, but you could also not do that. And and it would completely kind of change what that you could. There's apparently a pacifist way of playing this, at least that's what I gathered. But like kind of
more pacifist ways.
There's more pacifist ways, right? But you know, it kind of makes you think like, hey, there's a little bit more to this than meets the eye. It might actually have agency. The decisions you make might actually have agency instead of pretending to have agency. Can you go into a little bit of detail with that?
So some yes and some no. I'm a big believer in, like, video games kind of fall into two camps, and I think both are kind of misrepresentations of life. Like, there's the you're Commander Shepard and you can do anything. And, you know, obviously, you know, the fundamental plot of Mass Effect in that example is more or less fixed, but you do have a large degree of control over the conversations. Right. Or, you know, your polar opposite of that is Mario. Super Mario 1. You start at the left and the game's over when you can't go right any further. And you just go left to right and that's it. And you can't even walk backwards in the first one. The screen won't scroll that way. So like that's the polar opposite. The fact is some things in life are like that. So here's the deal. We have a story woven into everything. And yeah, Reina can determine, or the player controlling Reina can have some control of it. Some of it is randomized when you create your game. And that is how it's going to be. And you don't know what that is. There's different possible configurations. Because again, in life, some things you can interact with, but they are set in motion beyond your control. And then, there are some things that are fully in Reina's control. So, not everyone has to live, not everyone has to die. And there's a lot of different characters in the game. And I don't really want to say anymore because I don't want to spoil anything. But things do not have to play out the same way. Like, it's awkward, right? This reminds me of the movie Blade Runner 2049 when it came out, where everyone was like, what's it about? And it's like, I can't tell you anything. Just like, I don't want to spoil the first scene.
I just want to point out the fact that when talking about a game about choice and causality, you first mentioned Mass Effect, a series where choice ended up meaning nothing entirely by the end.
That was their thesis, right? They were making like they were going through the free will debate, and finally they were like, none of it matters.
Yeah, and that's kind of your story might have, a point A and a point B, but it's kind of the way that you can get from point A to point B varies depending on the setup, depending on how you want to approach the issue. But it was more than just the result. It was what the world kind of looked like. How it functioned was a little bit different, to the point where it felt like it had a little bit more weight to it.
Can I talk it up for the audience for a minute? Like, I'll
absolutely.
Give the story.
No, that's what we're
I'm
here
going to
for.
assume none of you have heard of the game or care about it, but I'm going to win you over. Reina is thrown into a situation. She's looking for a person named Jericho. You don't know why. Maybe she's trying to kill him. Maybe she's trying to save him. She's just looking for this guy named Jericho. She gets captured, and she doesn't know who captured her. She doesn't know anything that's going on, and she doesn't even know that she has been given. She knows she's been given this necklace, but she doesn't know it's significant. This is a world where there's artifacts that have special powers. I always use Indiana Jones as the example, because in Indiana Jones, it's more or less the real world, but if you open the Ark of the Covenant, your face will melt. Or if you drink from the Holy Grail, you'll live forever. It's like there's these special things that do have the properties that are ascribed to them. So she's got this necklace. We call it the regret device. And if you've ever thought, I wish I knew then what I know now, because if I did, I would have done something differently. Well, that's what she can do. She doesn't change. Everything else goes back to how it was, though. So in the context of a Metroidvania, sometimes you come across a path and you're like, man, if only I could jump higher, I would be able to get up there. Well, boom, as soon as you can jump higher, you can go back there. You can do that just by backtracking, but you can also do that by traveling back in time in this game. Reina can revisit any moment in her past. And so if you get beat up by bad guys and lose all your health, in most video games, you die and you go back to your last save or whatever. And some have in-narrative explanations, and we've got that. There's these fountains where you have save points, and she gets all her health back. Well, if she's about to die from being beaten up, the regret device automatically kicks in and warps her back to safety. But she's traveled back in time. Everyone you've killed, they're all back. The one catch is she doesn't change. So if Reina has stolen your wallet, she has your wallet and you say, hey, you stole that, give it back. If she now rewinds time, she still has your wallet. She can rewind time to a day ago before you even met. She'll still have your wallet, and your wallet will wink out of existence, and you'll think, where did that go? I should go looking around for it. So in one situation, in the traditional timeline, Reina's stolen your wallet and you have an adversarial relationship. In the second one, she's got it. You have no idea what happened. Maybe you're going to go exploring. Maybe you'll wander to a different place, and things are going to progress differently. So we describe it as time travel, but it's a lot messier than that, because reality is conforming around her version of like where objects are and stuff. Like the very act of traveling back is altering things. And so we get weird things like she'll talk to a boss before a boss fight and they'll have a conversation. Well, if you lose, you go out, she'll march right back in and she's pissed off and she knows exactly what conversation is going to happen. She's meeting this person for the second time. They're meeting her for the first time, and the timelines don't exactly match up. And this game is exploring these asymmetries that get created. And that's how we get weird things like she can have your wallet before she's stolen it. Weird things can happen. And to a certain extent, a large part of the game is teaching you about those. And then another large part of the game is once you've been taught that, you got to figure it out, because this is the thing you need to manipulate on a fairly micro level for sort of room puzzles, and then a macro level to really understand, like, Reina's walked into a trap. She doesn't know this, but she's walked into a trap designed to catch people who have this thing. And if you want to save Jericho, you have to figure it out, and you have to figure out what it can do and what it can't do, because some stuff is just bait for you to use it and will get you in trouble, and other stuff, it is absolutely essential.
Did you do a lot of time travel research? Like, and I know that sounds stupid, but you know, when people write about time travel, it becomes it could be a disaster. Like, you just don't know, because you start paradoxing yourself, and you're just like, wow, whatever. Or was this kind of just well, if I do this, what would happen? What would the theory of this be? Like, are you just creating your own little theories here?
Yeah. Well, I mean, have you guys played Chrono Trigger?
Of course.
Yeah, I've got the Wings of Time on my wall right there.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I've been thinking about it ever since I played that game, like in '95 when I was a little kid. Read time travel. Yeah, I mean, I think about it a lot. Like, if you're writing a story for a game and working on a game, like, this is spread out over years. I intended it to be quick, but it's like I've been doing full-time work on the game for just under 2 years, and we're getting pretty close to the finish line now. But, you know, writing the story and all that happened years before, because just coming up with a general idea. And I have that sort of stuff with a lot of things. Like, a lot of the time I'll come up, oh, that'd be a cool idea for a game, so I write it down. So I have some ideas that I had, like, when I was 16 that I still have written down, and, you know, you grab bits and pieces. Anyway, the story goes back a ways, but I did think about things like time travel, and, you know, how do you resolve a time paradox? Like, oh, I went back, and yeah, I did do some sort of formulating, like, oh, you could have a time travel where, like again, if I do something, we'll do Back to the Future. If I'm Marty McFly and I change something, how do I know I've changed it when I travel back? Because I was messing around with my mom, and he's messing around with his mom in that movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. More innocent age, or maybe not.
They knew what they were doing.
You know, you think, oh, how does that work? And so sometimes, you know, people talk, oh, well, you have to have time traveler's immunity, where the time traveler knows what's going on. It's just a special exception. And I thought, well, what if, like, reality, like, instantly fluxes through all these potential things, and the only one that's like a stable time stream is, like, the one where you know that this happened or whatever. So, like, you play through these scenarios. In the case of Reina and Jericho, it's a little bit different, though, because, again, we call it time travel, but that's sort of a simplification, because, again, what she's doing doesn't quite line up, because, again,
it's like
objects
timeline
are
manipulation almost.
Yeah, it's like this Heisenbergian thing where by doing it, she's already changed things. And that was a side effect of, this is going to get weird. Originally, to save money and time and to do, like, a cool hip indie thing, the story was going to be written in the environment. Okay, so, like, the words of the story would be written around you, and no one should. This is a bad idea. Like, it's cool for, like, a game jam game, but, like, what happens if you go right to left? Like, do you just read the same story again but backwards, or are you supposed to read while you're fighting bad guys? But one of the things was, well, if we're exploring and stuff, how do we get her back to the left? Because we can't have them, like, running backwards through the story a whole bunch. Let's say, okay, well, what if you're going back? Okay, well, what if by going back, you're going back in time? And then it started iterating from there. So it started with this really weird idea. And then we start coming up, it's a weird idea, so you get weird solutions. And then we ditched the weird idea, but kept the idea of, like, exploring continuity. And then I started thinking about, like, oh, hey, this is kind of like how, when you have something you regret in life, you kind of replay the situation over and over in your mind, and you imagine, oh, what if it had gone this way? What if it had gone this way? It's like, well, let's just make that the story.
So it's a butterfly effect, really. It's like you get to see how it kind of flutters. Yeah.
A little bit of butterfly effect is sort of like when she's not being intentional about it, it's butterfly effect. And then after that, it's like, oh, can you actually wield this? Because your final puzzle is to basically create this perfect chain of cause and effect where you know how the butterfly is going to go no matter what you do. And so, like, now you got to pick, and do you understand what's going on well enough. Again, to go back to the Mass Effect series, like one of the cool things about Mass Effect 2 is like so much about the series is talking to people and like getting to know them and interacting with the characters. And so like the final battle of Mass Effect 2 is essentially the test of like, do you understand the characters well enough? Like, do you know who can do this and survive? Do you know like who's well suited to these tasks? Because some of them are kind of obvious and some of them are more general. And so it's like, yeah, do you understand your people? And so this one is like, do you understand the events that have happened in this game? Because there's going to be a right at where the demo ends, the path splits in 3. Most Metroidvania games are fundamentally linear. You know, they wrap around on themselves, but you know, you still usually have to get one power up to open a door. Like in Super Metroid, you cannot open a green door without super missiles. So okay, they show you the green door, but you still have to go get the super missiles. It might as well be a straight line in terms of your routing. In this one, it branches in 3, right where the demo ends, and that's sort of when the tutorial area of the game ends and the game fully begins. And you pick what you're going to do first, you pick what you're going to do second, you pick what you're going to do third. You have to keep revisiting this decision and exploring the different consequences. And you get to know who's on each of those paths, what are their agendas, will they work with you, are they only out to get you, are they in on this trap that's been laid for you? And if you understand that, you can manipulate cause and effect, and you can manipulate people. And conversely, if let's say, Steve, let's say you know how the regret device works, because most people don't, but a couple people in the game do. Let's say you know how the regret device works. You know someone is running around you with it, and all of a sudden your wallet disappears from your pocket. You know what's up. You're like, there's only one way this could happen. I didn't lose my wallet. Someone took it on a different continent. Like someone's screwing around with it right now. So what can you do to mess with them back? And yeah, that's what the game's about. This back and forth. Yes, like this conversation with indirect timelines. I think it's neat.
Yeah.
How do you begin to put all this into the code of a game? Because you know, I think about games that involve like time manipulation or travel. Like you can say Singularity, where you can repair damaged bridges or walls, or Prince of Persia, Sands of Time, where you reverse your actions. Or what's that girl's name from Overwatch? I forget what her
Tracer.
name. Yes, Tracer, who rewinds her moves. That's a simple, you can trace that literally back to where it was, but how do you implement these big ideas into code that can, from what I can tell, could like unravel really quickly?
So there's 2 answers. One's the answer to your question, is the second is I'm never going to do this again. Okay. So let's start there. It's not too bad until you have to save the game, and then it gets really weird, because it's even hard for me to explain now because I've written most of the game saving code and it's pretty good. So I haven't thought about it in a while. But so there's the continuity of like what's going on in the game, right? It's like, okay, this guy's had his wallet stolen, this guy's dead, and then Reina saves the game. So we save it with that guy dead and that wallet stolen. But then there's Reina's continuity, which is maybe she's like gone somewhere else and rewound time. So like the world continuity doesn't match her personal continuity. And then there's you, the player, who also may have a different actual timeline. And then when you're writing the data to save all this, yeah, it gets weird and unpleasant. And yeah, basically the technical answer to your question is, there is we do have the rules that are consistent, at least. Like if Reina has it, it stays with her. Right. Things get weird when she gives them up again. So like there's orbs that are kind of like small keys in a Zelda game, where it's like, okay, as long as she's carrying it with her, it's easy to track. We just tuck it away with Reina and we keep track of it. If she like saves the game with it and then puts it somewhere else, and then you save the game again, things get annoying, because like, okay, it was with her, now it's not with her. So if she goes back to that moment, it'll appear in her hand. And then every single fountain in the game is a save point. So every single fountain has a snapshot. When you use it, it creates a snapshot the first time. of just who's alive, who's dead, what's where, what doors are open, what doors are unlocked. And it does that through the whole game for every single save point. And yeah, oops.
Wow.
And
Yeah,
that's
I hate
how
it.
games go from a simple scope to a crazy scope, and that's where delays come from.
Because
Like
it sounds
it's
like
crazy.
A fun like sci-fi caper kind of film like you would see on late night TV, but then it's an original idea, but putting that into practice in the game, I just, to me, sounds like God bless you, sir, for having patience to
I
see
wish
it
I hadn't
through.
done it.
Oh, don't say that. Because
Well, I think it'll be cool. No, you misunderstand me. I wish you had done it.
Oh, got it. Got it.
Or
Oh,
some
so
sort of intern, maybe.
just go back in time, slip me the paperwork, and
Yeah.
that's how we'll do it.
I can't code for shit.
I'll quit my job, spend 2 years
Learning code,
learning Unity, and then I'll
and then
I'll
we'll
get
use
right
the
on that.
regret device. We'll know all the information, but we'll start 2
Exactly.
years ago, and it'll be great.
Yeah.
On a quick side note, I think if my mom spoke more English, she'd call me her regret device.
Oh.
Just
Well,
saying.
Andy, what's Greek for regret device?
I don't know. Is it Andy?
Oh.
Asimakis.
Oh.
Here's a question for you. Let's talk about combat.
Ooh,
because
slick combat.
All this timeline mumbo jumbo. Hi. All the timeline mumbo jumbo.
Okay, I'll be quiet.
My kids will
It's a
probably walk
visit
down
from my
any
daughter.
minute. Yeah,
I mean, it's
that door right there. Same difference.
Yeah.
It's nice. It's
Okay,
nice
so combat.
for a college thesis, all this time travel stuff. But
Yeah,
let's
that's
get
great.
into
But we're
why-
playing a game here. Okay.
why am I holding this thing in my hand and playing this?
This
game?
is the razzle dazzle. This is the part where you go, oh shit, this is cool.
It's clicking.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah. Come on, give us the sugar.
You want me to talk about the combat?
I want you to talk.
Yes.
I want you to tell us.
Okay.
Tell our listeners what this feels like, because it's familiar but different enough.
Yeah. So, I was inspired by sort of 3 major games or like game families. Transistor. So we have like a little bit of the story sort of stuff that Supergiant games typically have, and some of the way a lot of abilities combine in Supergiant games, and so that's something that was important to me. That's going to come up in combat. Hollow Knight was a big inspiration, but the feel should be quite different in tone. So Hollow Knight's a great game, and I won't say anything bad about it. But the combat there is, you sort of have to have like a Zen-like quality when you play it, where you wait and see what the enemy gives you, and then you try to attack them while they do it. Like if you play Hollow Knight and you're chasing enemies around, it's not going to work out well. You sort of, you like have to be like the samurai, waiting and then striking. I am not super patient. I blame playing games on emulators where it's like, oh, I died, reload, and you just fast.
This is like kindred spirits, Dave.
Yeah. And I'm also a really big fan of Mega Man X, which was the final major inspiration. And, even just like how you hold the controller, these days, some people like having you dash using the bumpers, but I'm old school. I don't believe in that, because like when you play Mega Man X, the dash is so fundamental to how you do everything. And so like the way you move your hand across the controller, just from this, what would be A on a Super Nintendo, and you just glide it over to B, and then you shoot in the air, and it's just like this smooth circular pattern and everything. And that's what makes you go the fastest you can possibly go. And if you shoot while you're dashing in Mega Man X, you do double damage. Like there's all these little things to reward go, don't wait, attack. And so I wanted to bring the combat a little bit in that direction, except Reina uses a sword. And so some people would be like, okay, so it's like controlling Zero in a Mega Man X game. I think it still feels kind of different, but it's just this idea of the combat is about movement, and it is about get in and get out. And by the end of the demo, you get the dash scarf ability, which is the one that really lets Reina move around a lot. And you see like, oh, this could be a good speed game, because you have really cool movement options similar to what's in Celeste, but you also fight with a sword. And you have a lot of different ways the abilities can be combined and linked together and sequenced. And you just jump in, pounce, and get out. And Reina as a character isn't meant to feel powerful, especially like at the beginning, you are can't do anything. She has no weapons. She has no nothing. She can barely jump. But you build up, and you sort of have this character who's got a sort of a scrappy side to her. She has like, she's the sort of person who would bite in a fight. Like, yeah, there's, you know, there's no honor here. Like, she's here to win. And is resourceful, and so the combat's meant to reflect that. It's like, okay, do what you can as fast as you can, and then run, and then get right back in there and attack again. So in a way, like, it's almost turn-based, where it's like you attack and then retreat a little bit, because again, she's intentionally physically weaker than everyone else in the entire game. She's not more informed than anyone else in the entire game. So it's like, you can't just sit there. It's not like, you know, if Arnold Schwarzenegger was the main character, where it's like, oh, you could just walk up and punch people. Well, Reina can't do that. She'll be overpowered. Like, but you can get in, take your shots, and get out. And that's what combat's about. This super fast-paced, link your abilities. And even like in a game like Dark Souls, for example, they don't have like move cancellation or dash cancellation, where it's like, once you start swinging your big great sword and you get your big arc going, you can't interrupt that. You hit the button to attack it, and you got to go for the whole animation. It's polar opposite in this. You can do a dash out of any attack whenever in the attack you want. You can roll out of it. You can dodge back. Like, you have a high degree of control all the time. And show us what you got.
I never thought of the Mega Man X-Zero connection. Like, it's so there. It's not like painfully obvious, but it's right there.
Yeah. The one catch is, the only reason Reina has a sword is because thematically I like the idea of her being forced to go towards danger. Because and that's a major problem early on in the game, where the enemies have guns and Reina has a sword. If she is like 4 feet away, it's totally advantage Reina. But getting to that distance is pretty tricky. And so you start learning like ways of dodging in the air and stuff that help close the distance. And then the dash scarf is the one where it's like, oh, you can get to 4 feet away in like a quarter of a second, because she can move so fast with it. But yeah, that was sort of the motivation, was like this concept of like moving towards danger. Like, you can't be safe, because Metroidvania games very much are about like being kind of uncomfortable and being a little bit overwhelmed by the world and thinking like, I don't know where to go. And like, there's a little bit of discomfort, and I wanted that in there because, again, this is a story where, given what she's trying to do, like, she should feel like in danger, and like, you just have to get practice doing this uncomfortable thing over and over. That's because, like, when you play as Zero in a Mega Man X game, like, it doesn't quite have the same feeling. I think it's like, oh, if Zero gets near you, you're dead. Because like, he's a feels more like an expert fighter.
Yeah, he's a superhero. Like, it kind of, I don't know why I'm reminded of this, but I feel like it's almost like if you were to plug in a controller to the Bride in Kill Bill. Like, yeah, she's a trained fighter, but she's also going up against way more, like, she should have died 100 times in those movies.
Yeah.
Like, but the fluidity of it and her tactics and just going in and messing up an entire room and then just go. For some reason, I just keep making that connection in my head. And it's cool. Like, that's the other thing is, like, you know, how many, I can't believe this sentence is going to come out of our mouths, but out of my mouth, but there are so many games now, especially from the indie scene, that have a strong female protagonist now. And there, you know, you start to kind of lose track of, you know, what's going on. But there's something about Reina that stands out to me in a Lara Croftian kind of way, that she's not a superhero. She's almost like learning. She's like the origin story of a superhero, where she doesn't want the responsibility. She doesn't want these powers, but she's got to learn how to use them and use them quick.
Yeah. The setup of the game is basically, she is incapable of solving the problem she has gotten herself into. And the deal is, all of the enemies are attacking her weaknesses, and the situation itself is targeting, is a poison to her weaknesses. And she has to learn from the enemies. Like those are her teachers, as the people out to get her. And conveniently, she gets second chances because she has a regret device. So yeah, she's learning from adversaries. And I think like that's an important part of the story. You know, you think about Star Wars and it's like, who trained Luke Skywalker? It's like, okay, well, Obi-Wan Kenobi showed him the ropes, and then he learned a little bit from Yoda, and then Darth Vader is the one who bumped him up the most. Like at the end of Empire Strikes Back, where he goes to fight Vader, you watch him at the beginning of that fight, and he's like bouncing around and using one hand, and then by the end, like he's bloodied and all cut up, but he's like hammering, and he actually like gets a hit on Darth Vader, and it's like, oh man, like dude, he just went to grad school, like he had Jedi kindergarten, and now like this is the real stuff. So like I think it's important that both the adversary is attacking the character's weaknesses and that the character is transformed by that. And then the other catch is, yeah, a strong female character is a little bit of a trope. I think like there was just all the characters were basically guys for a bit. You know, you can say Samus is an exception, but like those were the exceptions, right? Like, yeah, I know some people have come up with lists, but like you can come up with a list of like 20 characters from before 2000 that were female, but it's like you can come up with a list of 100 male guys. Or even something I did because I was looking for inspirations for writing good female characters. So I went to IMDb and I looked at the top 250 movies. And I just did an exercise like, okay, who are the best female characters from this? And I mean, you got to go, you don't get a female main character until you hit Alien on the list. Like Shawshank Redemption, it's a good movie, and it's not a movie I would say that would be improved by having a female character or anything, because I think like you let the story dictate what you've got, but there's no one to go off of. Okay. Right. Inception, okay, we got one, we got Ariadne. You know, The Dark Knight, it's like, oh, okay, we kind of got one. Like, you know, there's not a huge pool. So I think like the indie scene backlashed against that. But with all that said, there's like these cheap cop-outs I don't like. Like a lot of the time, oh, well, there's only Black Widow's the only Avenger, but you know, she's really good at Kung Fu and all this. I think that's not respectful to the character. Like you just made them bounce around and tried making them the cool character, or like, oh, she's such a badass. But it's like, that's not character development, right? Like I'm just trying to make a character who has an arc, who has to grow and learn. And she's just, as it turns out, the story, again, like she's just going through this terrible experience because literally everyone's out to get her and take her stuff. And so like, I think we get a good character because of that, because we didn't start off where it's like, oh yeah, we need a female character. We got to check this box, throw her in there. I don't know. We'll make her cool. Like, you know what I mean? It's like the opposite of like that scene in the Avengers Endgame where they just show like all the female Marvel superheroes and like in the one shot, and it's like, I get what you're doing, but like that's just that's hand waving. Like that's just point. Like you didn't do anything special. You know, it's like you got to give these people arcs. You got to make them do stuff. You got to make them grow. Then it's earned.
The greatest shortcoming of a good female lead is when they're too tied up in making her tough and hyper masculine that she can beat up any man in her way, and you forget that she needs vulnerability. She has
every character does.
They do that to be weak in some way, and you get caught up in trying to have them be this like symbol for something of empowerment, but you're forgetting that it's not human at all in any way.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, some people would maybe backlash because it's three dudes talking about this, but like,
sure,
I mean,
there's that.
I put thought into it, and like, you know, a lot of women have helping me with the script and everything, and we had a really difficult line to walk because at first I was like, okay, Jericho. At the same time, like, I don't want him to be the typical damsel in distress, so we have to like do stuff to make he's in a very passive role though because he's been captured, but it's like we have to do stuff to make him seem like a good character, and then we don't want it to seem like Reina's just doing it for her man, because that's like kind of disrespectful to both of them then, where it's like subordinates her, and it's like so there's a lot of stuff like you do have to juggle all of these things. But yeah, I mean, the fundamental is always like get a good character, and you get that by having them need something they don't have and lack the personal characteristics to get it. And so it's the journey of, okay, how do they become the person who can get to the destination?
Yeah. You know, one of my favorite movies of all time has what has become a a bro dude superhero character. But back in the day, in the first film, he was super flawed, and that's Die Hard. And John McClane is a broken man. Yep. He's a broken man. He's a really good cop, but he lost the love of his life, and now he's got to save her, even though he knows he can't have her anymore. He lost her. It's done. The romance is gone. Like, whatever. Everything is, falling apart. And he's so full of pride that he can't get out of his way. Now, that he's not a cool character because he's killing everybody. He's a cool character because he's got dimensions and nuance. And in the 80s, you got a lot, and I mean a lot, of bro dude characters that had zero nuance, zero development. Their whole point was to be with no shirt and to kill everything. Like, that was their point. And I think that the video game industry did that. Did the 80s male superhero movies, but female lead characters in like the last 15 years, where it was like, let's just build a superhero. That's what they want. Yep. They want, and it was like an overcorrection. But then you got the Tomb Raider reboot, right? The Tomb Raider reboot that had this Lara Croft that was super flawed, and like she basically, spoiler alert, she kind of becomes not a great person, and like.
Which you would expect,
right? Yeah, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, going up against like horrible people.
But then
it's not like she's hanging out with
a very human element to her.
Exactly, and that's what when you look at this from a perspective of, like, I am sensitive to that situation. I don't want to play just a white dude in every video game. Like, every time I could create a character, I create a female character. Like, I just like playing that, and I think it's because I don't want to fall into that trope. I don't want to fall into that. And the female leads kind of fell into that for a little while and didn't have the depth. But from the second you start playing your game, the second you get into it, Reina feels instantly like a layered character that you're really going to want to get to know, but also she feels familiar because there's that vulnerability. It's almost like, this is going to be weird, but whatever. It's like starting a new job, where I feel like this whole thing could be an allegory for you quitting your job and starting game development. Like,
inadvertently, yep.
I mean, just think about it. Like, the whole world, you quit your job, you're going on your savings, and you are trying to do this thing that literally your life depends on, your family depends on this thing succeeding. That's your Jericho. Getting this game done and getting it shipped, that's Jericho, and hopefully getting great reviews and all that stuff, that's your Jericho. But the whole world is trying to get you, but you have that regret device, you have your programming, whatever the hell it is, like, that you can figure it out and create this game, and you see it right away. It's so palpable from the second you see this game in motion, and you see the initial conflict when you first get a weapon, and you first go head to head with an enemy. Like, you just see it. It's very, very tangible when you pick up the controller and play.
I'm so glad to hear you say that, because that's intentional. Like, fundamentally, I don't like stories that are about themselves. Like, a big inspiration, The Old Man and the Sea was a big one, which again is a story about suffering, right? Superficially, it's like one of the proud tradition, again, book in this proud tradition of like books about the sea that aren't really about the sea, or books about catching fish that aren't really about catching fish. Like, he's this old man, he's down on his luck, but he's this master fisherman, and his entire life he's been growing as a fisherman, and he goes deep into the sea and he catches a fish on his line, and the fish is like the fish version of him. It's this giant thing that is the master of fishes, and it's the master fisherman versus that, and one of them has to die because the old man will not let go. So it's, will he starve to death first, or will the fish die? And it's like, that's their thing. And you could read that book and be like, man, fishing's great. But really it's like, it's all about like the things that are going through his mind, where it's like, oh, he thinks like, man, this fish is great. I wish I hadn't caught it. I should just let it go. And then he'll immediately contradict himself, like, no, you can't. You have, and like the cycles you go through in your mind,
right?
Of like, because we do that, right? You think like, oh no, I don't care if this happens. Like, what am I thinking? Of course I care. You lose yourself for these little minutes, and that sort of stuff I think is cool. So it's like, Reina and Jericho, it's written to be about suffering and like the difficult things we have to do in life. And I'm glad you're starting to see like, oh yeah, I can see your situation, and like the goal is that people see themselves in it and think like, oh yeah, this is about, like, everybody has, you know, the thing they're trying to get, and the story is an examination is like, okay, what has to happen to you if you want to achieve it? What do you have to go through? Like, what are all the pieces of yourself that need to be cut off and cast away and then replaced with something else? And they don't all, quote, make you a better person. And it's not really clear, does Reina become a better person over the course of the game, but she becomes more rounded and she becomes more complex, and she becomes capable of thinking of things in different ways. Because again, life's not necessarily, and I don't try to say she becomes a worse person either. I think she becomes better, but it's not black and white, right? It's not like she has to learn to forgive. It's like, that's very shallow, I think, right? Another story I'm inspired by a lot is like the Count of Monte Cristo, which it's the quickest 117 chapter read you'll ever come across. But it's super good. And yeah, Edmond Dantes has everything, and right before he gets it, it's all taken away, and he's thrown in jail for 20 years and his life's ruined, and he escapes and has the chance for revenge. And I mean, part of what he has to learn is forgiveness, but part of the point is the book of, or part of the point of the book is, but if you forgive them, that's not justice. Like, these people still, this group of people did a horrible thing and were rewarded for it. It's like, you have to fix that. The evil have succeeded and the good have been crushed. And like, if you just let them go, it's not right. So it's like, he becomes a better person, and in some ways he becomes a worse person, and he's negotiating that back and forth of like, okay, I need to snap the world back into a more just place, because this guy who locked me up and lied and did all these terrible things, like, now he's in a position of authority. We can't leave him there. We got to get him right back down to where he belongs. And then we'll discuss forgiveness.
I feel like we're learning a lot about you.
Yeah.
And that's really exciting.
I just made a note to reread Moby Dick when this is over.
Yeah.
Now, Andy,
yes,
we're getting to know Dave on a very deeply personal level.
Yeah,
but I think we need to take it to the next level.
Yeah, we gotta plunge the depths here.
Yeah. Okay. We want to get to know you, like the darkest, deepest corners of your psyche. You understand?
Okay.
It's time for rapid fire. This is where we ask you some shit and you tell us some answers. So simple. A baby can do it. No, they can't. They can't give you one answer for anything ever. Never mind. I take that all back. Is cereal a soup?
No, I think it's in a sauce.
Okay.
I think milk is a sauce. So it may be a pasta.
Wow.
All right.
Wow, that is a first here on the Dual Screens podcast.
That is a wild answer. If a random person was handed a note with your handwriting on it, what would they deduce from your handwriting?
Oh man, this guy needs to take his time.
Slow down.
I normally write in all caps, so it's like all capital letters, and the capital letters are just really big capital letters. But like, if I'm in a hurry, it kind of like starts turning into handwriting. And then because I'm a weird guy, I intentionally like have a couple different printing systems as well, just in case I need to leave a note that doesn't look like it was written by me. So like, they sometimes get smattered in if I'm not being deliberate. So it's gonna look like it was written by like 3 different serial killers who are in a hurry.
Slow down and stop screaming at me.
Oh man. What was the first video game you remember ever playing?
Super Mario Bros.
Simple. That's a good answer. Very common.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, speaking about video games, I want you to think about all the games you've played in your entire life and the ones that really meant the most to you and had a huge impact on you. If you could pick, I kind of want to say it's going to be Chrono Trigger, the answer, but regardless, if you could pick one game to wipe from your memory,
ooh,
and then play it for the first time, quote unquote, what game would that be?
So I can answer that. This one's tricky. But when I beat Final Fantasy VII, that was I had this strong sense of wanting to do exactly that. And I think that's still probably my favorite game of all time. It's definitely been the most impactful. And again, like a really good layered story and really good layered characters. We'll see if the remake can can pull it off as it goes on. But
it's off to a good start. I feel that one.
Pardon me?
It's off to a good start. The remake, I feel so.
I was a little worried at the end.
Oh,
I'm not worried about it.
Interesting.
I like when things get weird.
Yeah.
Speaking of weird, let's go into your past here.
Okay.
Pumps or light 'em up sneakers?
Oh man. Pumps were what I wanted. I've had neither, because by the time I got old enough to be able to I could buy whatever I want, I was like, I just want comfortable shoes. Pumps were the rage, and I'm pretty sure they could make me dunk. So
they obviously can.
Yeah.
Pumps are dead goldfish. Pineapple on pizza, yes or no?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to let you in. Most Saturdays, unless it's very hot and I don't want to be turning on the oven to full blast, most Saturdays I make pizza dough with the kids, and then on Sundays we make pizza, and ham and pineapple is on the rotation every time.
That is delicious.
Yeah.
It is delicious.
Yeah. Yep. I just offended half of the people, and I'm glad.
Would you rather?
I'm not sorry.
Would you rather, without any, it could be done, you're not going to get hurt, there's no danger, you go and you do it, explore the deepest parts of the ocean or the far away planet?
That's a tough one. I'm just going to go with the planet on principle. Because let's say you find something terrible. I mean, it's all the way over there, right? You find that in the ocean. Who knows?
Uh-oh. Find the Kraken.
Yeah. There's a John Wyndham sci-fi novel called The Kraken Wakes, which is basically it's there's not extraterrestrials or whatever. The problem comes from deep in the ocean, and they start killing people, and they have armored ships that are used to withstanding the pressure of all of that water crushing down on them, so they're in these semi-invincible cases, and it's a bad time for everyone. They melt the polar ice caps to aquaform the earth to make it more watery for them, and
I think I want to read that. I think I want to read that. That sounds awesome.
It's another note to take. Give me a minute.
Yeah. Did you read the chrysalids in high school?
Reading is hard. You know that.
Okay. Some people read the chrysalids, which is by the same guy.
I know the name. Yes.
What is your safe word?
It's just tears.
It kind of defeats the purpose of a safe word. Is to get it before that happens.
I need to show a safe word.
Again, is if your game is based on suffering, you're just looking into yourself for inspiration at that point.
Yeah.
Steven?
You wake up in the morning and you get a news notification that hosts of the Dual Screens podcast, Andy Asimakis and Stephen Fontana, have been arrested. What is the crime they were both arrested for?
Oh boy.
You guys, hey?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think okay, I'm gonna go 2 layers deep. I think you were framed. All right.
Oh.
I think you were framed. It involved some sort of robbing a casino, but I don't think it was you. I think you guys are the fall guys, and it goes all the way to the top.
God, we're the patsies.
I like it.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, I'm gonna get you out of there. I'll be your lawyer.
Though realistically, it'd be me robbing the place, and Steven just like the hapless tag along that gets sucked into my stupidity.
Sure,
Yeah,
he's the fall guy.
Yeah.
That's the last twist. They weren't the fall guys all along. There was only one.
Like he would be like, "Oh, you want a drink?" I'd be like, "Yeah, sure." And I'll rob the casino, and then I'm like, "Oh yeah, he's with me."
Yeah. Remember we talked about this?
Go start the car, huh? Start the car.
You guys ever watch Lupin?
No.
Or did you watch Lupin on Netflix?
No.
At the very least, you should watch the first episode. I think you could relate.
That's all. Because that's all it takes for me. If the first episode's good, I will dive right the hell in.
Get right in.
Well, and the whole thing's only 10 episodes right now. But if you like shows about stealing things, yeah, or
like a
ones
good
where
heist.
maybe you didn't know you were the escape car driver, then check it out.
Man is speaking my tongue right now. Show about stealing things. Did I write it? Probably.
Let's get a couple more questions in here, Andy.
What is something you have done that should have killed you?
Oh man. Okay. There's a few candidates, but I had some time by myself, or even not even by myself. Friends were around, but it was a quiet time out in the summer, and I thought I'm going to climb a tree. I used to be like a rock climbing instructor, so I'm pretty good at climbing trees. What could go wrong? So I go up, I hang out there for a bit. When you're up in a tree, there's not a ton to do. So I start climbing down. I jam my foot, because it's a tree with sort of like the trunk splits.
Sure.
Jam my foot in the split, and it kind of gets stuck. And when you're in a tree, and it's not like I'm sitting there, it's hard to get your foot out of stuff, because like it's not like you can push up. Like I'm already kind of holding myself, so I don't have access to like all of the muscles, right? You can't push against the ground. That's what got you in trouble in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, all right, my other leg's free. What I'll do is I'll kick. I'm only like 12 feet up. I'll kick off of it, and I'll do like a dive roll and spin out, and that will be very cool. And so I prepare myself to do this, and I kick off. And right as I like straighten out my leg and launch myself sideways into the air, I think, oh, I could take my shoe off. That would get my foot unstuck, but I've already committed. And what happens is the leg comes out, part one of the plan works. I'm jumping, so I straighten my legs again. It jams back in. And if you can see, there's a tree. I just rotate 180 degrees so I'm face down, and I just drop straight down and land on my chest and break a rib. And as it turns out, I think that's probably better than if I'd gone for the dive roll, because that probably would have just been snapping my neck.
Oh my God.
Yikes. Yeah, that doesn't.
My friend Annalise was like hanging out like 50 feet away, and she saw me hit, and she was like, "Are you okay?" And at that moment, like, I'm kind of in pain, because like you feel the bone break and your pride's kind of hurt, and I just want to lie down and not talk to people for a bit. So it's just kind of like, yeah,
just give me a minute.
A little winded.
Punctured a lung.
Yeah, I landed on my chest kind of hard.
You are a Pokemon gym leader.
Ooh.
What is your gym?
All right. My favorite Pokemon is Emolga. Now we gotta asterisk this, okay? There was even a Reddit thread like a couple months ago or whatever on the front page, and people were like, "What's your favorite Pokemon?" And I went into there, and I Control F'd, and like way down at like 2000th, there's like one comment with a person being like, Emolga, and it has 2 upvotes, and I was like, yeah, that's my boy.
And one of them was
like Charmander. It's like, yeah, get out of here. Emolga is an adorable flying squirrel. He's like a Pikachu if Pikachu were good. So we got electric flying. It's kind of tiny. It's a flying Pokemon that can't use the ability fly, which, like, he's not the best. Okay, Emolga's not the
I get it.
but
Yeah,
I love
sure.
him.
right.
Sure.
Right.
So I think we maybe we look at electric, and maybe along some sort of tiny and cute and a lot of heart. Maybe not the best, but a lot of heart. Some sort of gym along those lines. So we'll have like Minun and Plusle in there.
Yeah. And
yeah, not the C team, but the B team.
Was it
Right.
Pachirisu or something like that? Get one of those.
Yeah.
guys in
So
there.
I think we're looking at like I'm the second gym.
That's
I'm
fine.
not the 8th
But
guy
the
who has the
lesson
dragons.
you're teaching is courage. right? You're teaching.
That's right.
You're teaching courage.
Following your
It's
heart.
the courage badge.
Right.
I like
Yeah.
it. I like it. Andy, take us into our final question.
Oh God.
Yes.
You know, it when these things are as fun as this one was in particular, the last question always kind of bums me out
Uh-oh.
a little bit. But
If you were drowning,
Not,
oh, go ahead.
Oh no.
Close.
I would
Close.
love to ask you that question.
Close.
All right.
This is a harder choice than if there was a baby and an old lady in the pool drowning. Who do you save? That's easy.
Oh, yeah.
That's easy. Or if it was a baby and your grandma, it's still easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That question, but this one is beyond the pale. All right. Talk about suffering. I think this question is for our own suffering and a little bit on the guest part as well.
Okay.
Dave.
Yeah.
It's a simple yet complex question. It is multi-layered, multifaceted, but also one-dimensional.
All right.
If that makes any sense.
I
The
think
goal is to make them have a nosebleed at some point in the lead up to the question.
Oh,
I'll get there
we're
one day.
preparing with beverage.
I'll get there one day.
All right. Hit me.
No context at all. But here's the choice you have. Andy or Steven.
Steven.
There
Nice.
it is.
That was so
Yeah.
that was so easy. That was
There
the
it is.
easiest
There it
dunk
is.
I ever
Yeah.
dunked.
That's the easiest question you've ever asked me, Andy.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is going to bring us to the end of the show. This was a fantastic one. And if you're not sold on Reina and Jericho, I don't know what the hell to tell you. But speaking of, Dave, where could everybody find the game? Where could everybody find you and all that fun stuff and follow everything?
The website is reclamationgames.com. On Twitter, we're Reclamation Game because we have one too many letters in the name of our company. It upsets me every time I say it. Reina and Jericho is on Steam. You should be able to find it even if you spell Reina's name wrong. But it is Reina. It's coming out in 2021, I hope, on Steam or PC, Windows PC, Steam, itch.io, Nintendo Switch, PS5. I got the code running on the dev kit today, so I can say that's probably going to happen now. Yeah, it was a trip. And we're hitting up Xbox stuff as well too. So we're trying to get it just on all the platforms.
Awesome. Folks, if you want to follow us on social media, I am at BadChild27, Andy is at PantsGuy, and the show is at Duel_Screens. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Andy.
I do have one last remark before we go.
Oh, wow.
Sure.
Okay. Yes, I'm prepared.
I mean,
I'm prepared for this.
it's
You're breaking up the flow.
No,
I mean, listen,
there's no flow.
I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Dave's awesome wife, Vanessa, who's also part of the team that does the music for the game.
Yeah.
And when you get a second, Dave, when this is all done, I do have a question for her. Who would you pick, me or Steven?
Oh,
That's fair. That's a fair
it is
question.
none of the above.
That's fair. That's a fair question.
She picked me.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
God.
on that
all
note,
right. All right, Steve, wrap it up.
On
Take it
that
away.
note, thank you, Dave. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, listeners, I think. And as always, please be excellent to each other.